The meeting is a platform for local and international entrepreneurs in the field of agriculture to meet, connect, and plan on how to invest in the sector. So this morning, to look at the significance of this, engagement, we have with us Rashid Conteh, who is a project officer and communication specialist at International Organization for Migration in Sierra Leone, IOM. Good morning, it's great to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rashid.
All right, so International Organization for Migration. Someone's going to be wondering, how are they connected to agribusiness or agriculture?
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me here today on behalf of our head of office, Mr. Alaji Sanusi Savage, who is unfortunately not able to be here today, so I'm here to represent the office. So you asked the question, what is the role of IOM in terms of agribusiness? Well, IOM principle is under the UN agency, is the leading agency in terms of migration. So we talk about agriculture, you have to involve migration, the movement of not only people, but also of things. So what we try to do is that IOM role is to bring in people specialists, more especially so Sierra Leone diasporas, bring them in with the expertise and experience that they have, try to see how we can incorporate that into the gap that exists in the current agribusiness of Sierra Leone through the support of the government of Sierra Leone.
Okay. So now IOM is working with the Office of the Diaspora Affairs.
Yes.
And you've given the reason why IOM decided to come on board. But one would say, why agribusiness in itself? Why not something else, but agribusiness?
IOM does a lot in its entirety in the world and in Sierra Leone especially. We support and complement the effort of the government of Sierra Leone. So whatever the government of Sierra Leone need us to do, that's what we do. And you talk about agriculture, we come in and support the agriculture sector. Previous years, we've done health mission in Koinadugu, which through the support and engagement of diaspora, which was very successful. And this year, we're also not only adding on to that, but we're also rolling out the agribusiness aspect of it as well.
Then we all know of course the state of agribusiness companies in the country.
Yes.
When it comes to them adding value to our own local products.
Yes.
But what are some of the key issues or perhaps the content of the discussion on that day?
Well, the key content is that IOM again is solely facilitating the discussion. We are hosting it, so we bring in the investors, we bring in the local farmers, and we bring in the key role player, which is the government of Sierra Leone. We bring in, we have discussion. The whole segment was separated into different panels, where you have panels on finance, you have panels on policy, you have panels on challenges that comes in terms of agribusiness. So we allow people to have this discussion, and not only to have a talk, but see people to kind of have some action plan after this discussion, what it is that we need to do and how we're going to do it. And one of the challenges that we have, one of the challenges that we have, which is a good challenge, was the Minister of Agriculture. He challenged us as IOM. He said, now you decided to have this 2-day workshop. We want you to bring us, suggest some policy and plan that we can take in as a government and see how we can better facilitate the agribusiness sector.
Now we talk of those, particularly so in the area of finance. We know finance is more so required at this moment. Yes. To boost production and productivity. So then what are the key actors when it comes to finance?
In terms of finance, but you also have to talk about the policy, you have to talk about the planning of it, the structure of it. You can have the money, but if the right plan is not in place, there's no success story out of it. So we brought in different stakeholders, especially the Japanese private investor company through Jethro, which is the Japanese extended trade organization. They came in, about 10 or 11 of them came in from different companies, from machineries to seeds to different sectors that came in and kind of just observe and see what it is Sierra Leone has to offer. And then we also have from the NGOs, we have World Vision, we have ADB, we have IFID, all those organizations came in. They also explained the already plans they have, so then we won't have repetition. Rather than having repetition, we can just have continuity. We don't want to replicate what other organizations do. We want to learn from what those organizations are doing and see how we can then fit in the gaps.
Okay. Now, the whole idea is to attract investment in the agriculture sector. So what sort of investment really are we looking at here?
Well, again, it's not just attracting this investment, it's also securing them and making them sustainable. We can bring in as many investors as possible. If they don't have the platform ready for them to succeed, it's impossible for it to be sustainable. So going back to your question, asking it, what are the things we have in place? Again, this is just a dialogue, a discussion. Not only to hear, but to see. And through diaspora engagement, we believe that that's one way we can have sustainable, because now you plug in not only NGOs activity, but then you plug in sustainable government entity. You plug in like the different MDAs, the ODAs and stuff. Those that have been existing for a while. So when they have rolled into it, you see the sustainability of this investment that we're hoping to provide.
Now, the reason why I asked this is because there's so much we could be doing when it comes to the to agribusiness that Sierra Leone unfortunately is not doing. There's a whole there's so much to it. Take for example from value addition, in terms of packaging, in terms of moving the product from its raw state to a byproduct or a finished product. These are things that we currently are not doing, and in areas where we're doing it, we're not doing it to a full scale capacity where it can really be commercialized. So, what sort of investment really are we expecting to see beyond the normal agribusiness that people already are engaging in Sierra Leone?
Well, again, that goes back to the people that were attendants, the key people that were invited to come. We have GoDown, which is a database organization that kind of seeks out who are your market, who are your suppliers. And of course, we brought in Esther Brussels, who also came in as a freight agency that can help us take into different. Currently, we have one person, which is Cali Fresh, that's taking in goods from Sierra Leone to the Europe market. But that's only one person, and that's one of the challenges, as you mentioned, is the product. There's different standard when you exporting things, when you export into the European market. Now, how do we fit those standards? We have to bring in the research, the people that making sure that we have those standards and that the product that are being made from the local farms gradually. And we did brought in a logistics team as well. James Newton was there as well, talked about the logistic part of that was one of the panel that we have about logistics. How do we move from the local farm into the European market, into the target market? Because if you look at the history of Sierra Leone, we are not just able to feed ourselves, but we can feed other countries. So once we're able to sustain our own needs, we can then able to export them out of Sierra Leone.
And Rashid, as we speak, of course, Sierra Leoneans, or perhaps those who are involved in the sector, will tell you that we are yet to utilize even 10% of our arable land that is richly rich in nutrients and very more productive for agricultural activities. You rightly mentioned the issue of mechanized farming, wherein the Japanese government is planning on bringing in machines, the required machines for boosting production and productivity in the country. But now the root cause, one will say, has to do with us having the required seeds.
Yes.
Us having the required seeds, and these seeds are provided to the smallholder farmers who are the various catchment areas, providing their supplies to these big companies. Are there plans of even looking into that? Because the other day I attended a conference that was organized by the African Seed Access Index.
Yes.
They call themselves TSHI. Are there plans of even venturing into that areas, knowing the required seeds? What are the seeds that are required at this moment for us to at least see the kind of agriculture that we are expecting as a country?
Well, again, I'm not an expert in agriculture, so I can't really tell you the required seed, but we did brought in local enterprises. I think one of them was Sakata's, which specialize in seed, from hybrid seed to different seed. So like I said, IOM is doing our role as an agency and the UN agency is to support and complement the effort of this government of Sierra Leone. So whatever they're requesting, you talk about seeds. I'm not a specialist in agriculture, but I'm sure there's mechanism in place when we had that discussion in terms of dealing with farmers, asking that that panel that we had in terms of challenges. That's one of the challenges. Talk about resources, access to land, access to seed, energy. Those are different challenges that were brought in, and then based on that discussion, we can then create a proposal and then deliver it to the government of Sierra Leone and see how it's going to be acted on.
Okay, so now, of course, the target here is both local and international investors. Now, you would find quite a number of people who will tell you, I'd rather just invest my money as opposed to being here, bringing all the expertise and actually starting the business hands-on, for myself. Now, so in terms of those people who are looking into investing, just financial investment into any business, is there some sort of a conversation around empowering the local farmers in itself, because what we see in many cases here is the fact that a lot of them are into subsistence farming, and that really is not business, and that's really not agriculture in itself.
Yes. I mean, that's goes back into one of the panels that we have, which is the financial panels. We brought in IFID and ADB and different organizations to see how we can structure some kind of a scheme, a financial scheme, not just as grant, because a grant only lasts you for so long, but you need financial scheme that can then be sustainable for 3, 4, 5 years. Then after that system, that you now have the local farmers that can be empowered financially, not just machinery. So when you talk about finance, again, we brought in the key players in those that we had discussion on that. There were, I won't say promise made, but there was still, there were discussion that was very important that people were alluded to and that were very aware about and then become sensitized about.
Then IOM resembles the juncture connecting, the different bodies on that particular day. From what you've said, is that so? But are we expecting a situation where IOM would pour in their own money to at least support agricultural activities in the country?
I mean, that's something IOM does. When we do get funding from donors, we are obligated to do that, to support the government of Sierra Leone and the people of Sierra Leone. So whenever there's a funding for it and there's a program written for it, once we receive that funding, it's approved, that's what we do, we implement that program. So we can't promise that we're going to do this when we don't have the funding for it. But that's one thing. That's the difference when you private and NGOs and government. As an NGO, we don't go and speak what we want to do. As NGO, we tell you what we're doing. So even with this, we refrain from doing press release and all that, because we realize that we'd rather just have you there and see what we're doing right now. So we promise to do X, Y, and Z when we don't have the capacity for it at the moment.
Okay. Now, in all this engagement, the government is a major player.
Yes.
It's actually one of the most important major players in all these conversations. Now, what sort of expectations were they for the government in itself to make, not just only the environment or the climate conducive for investors, even for the local farmers as well? What sort of policies were people, during the conversations that were coming out that government needs to, take into consideration? Really, what were the expectations, heaped on the government?
Well, there was not much expectation on the government. What we had is just a discussion. I mean, based on the challenges that were brought in from the diasporas and even from the local farmers they are facing, we then put in those challenges together, and then we would then send it to the government of Sierra Leone. But again, one of the things that was very successful about this forum is the contribution from partners, from government agency and IOM itself. Everybody was there. You have the Ministry of Trade, you have the Ministry of Agriculture, and then you also have the Ministry of Political and Public Affairs. So those key players were there, and they did not only send a representative, but themselves were there. In fact, the Minister of Agriculture was the keynote speaker, and then he already highlighted some of the challenges the government is facing. So it was not something new when people talked about those challenges. And they also talked about how they're looking forward to work with their own relevant partners in making sure those challenges are addressed and moving forward.
Rashid, this is not the first time we've seen these kinds of engagements. We are in top players, from across various facets within society gather together to promote agricultural activities in the country. But we know there is, of course, an expectation, and this, I would say, some people will say, it's the first step of 1,000 miles.
Exactly.
But so, what is then the key expectation of IOM, in all of this? What is IOM expecting at the end of everything?
Well, one of the expectation objective was actually met yesterday, day 2, which we have a agreement between SLEPA and also Jethro, which is Jethro is kind of like a complementary part of SLEPA in the Japanese government, where they agreed to do a memorandum of understanding between these two agencies, which is a good thing. This is kind of a start of a discussion saying that the government of Sierra Leone is in discussion with the government of Japan in making sure this agribusiness is taken upon. So that's one thing that was kind of, I thought, was different from other things, other discussion that have been going around in terms of agribusiness. And you also mentioned is that what is IOM expecting to do? What IOM wants to do? One of our main objectives is to thrive, is for the agribusiness sector to thrive. And doing that is through the diaspora engagement. We felt is one of the key way to doing that, bringing in diaspora, not just anybody, but people who have love and passion to come back to Sierra Leone and invest and provide their skills. We've done it before, and we know it's possible. Other countries are doing it, and we're trying to do the same thing in Sierra Leone.
Okay, so bringing back the diasporas to come home and invest in their country, how receptive was that? What sort of commitments did we see? How many people were enthused or enthusiastic enough to say, okay, I want to be a part of the conversation and probably see where that's going to take me?
Yeah, I mean, we brought in a total of 11 diasporas for this forum itself, and they were very excited and they were very eager to be part of it and very involved, because it's one thing to be out of Sierra Leone and think about how you're going to help Sierra Leone, and it's another thing to actually come to Sierra Leone and face reality and see how it's going to be. So that's one of the gaps we hope we actually bridge in terms of this discussion. And they were very receptive. Most of them are willing to come. If you look at, based on the data that we did, the research and survey that we did, most diaspora out there are willing to come back to Sierra Leone and contribute into the development of Sierra Leone. So because of that, that's why we're doing this. We want to bring them out. Of course, I mentioned about the health mission that we had last year in Konedugu, which was very successful. We brought in about 26 medical personnel, very successful. And then we're trying to do the same thing here with agriculture and different sectors. Okay,
so now this 2-day event is over. What's the next step?
Well, actually, it's not over. It started because the 2-day. No, I'm not saying the event over, but it's actually that's the beginning of what we're trying to do. That's the stepping stone. After the 2-day event, that's when we think the actual work start. You know, the actual work start. Again, the minister challenged us, say, IOM, we want to see something. We want to see report. Put it together, compile it, bring it to my office, and then he would take it from there. That's where we're going to do it. And in fact, and from there, we're also facilitating the agreement between Jethro and Sleeper, and also we're also reaching out to our donors how we can get funding in facilitating this agribusiness, to making sure that we have sustainable business going on, not only from IOM, but then it's then filtering through, it's then gradually filtered to the government of Sierra Leone.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. All right.
Well, it's been a great conversation, but I'm sure that because you know, the whole idea is to speak to a lot of diasporans out there, and we have quite a lot of them watching us right now. So they're listening, they're watching. What would you like to say to them to encourage them to probably come back home? Not just even if it's not in agriculture,
but other sectors,
but in any other sector to come back home.
I mean, like I said, we're working on different concepts. We're working on different programs that we're trying to get diaspora highly involved in the development of Sierra Leone. And we know that is a key. And just whatever you're doing out there in the diaspora, just continue to do it. And then just know that we're trying to make it very receptive of you to come. We don't want to invite you to Sierra Leone and then there's nothing for you to do. So to the message out there to the diaspora, I am a diaspora, where actually they revoked my diaspora. They told me I'm not a diaspora anymore, I'm a returnee. I lived in the United States for 20 years, and then I recently decided to relocate back to Sierra Leone. So I'm not a home base now, I'm not a diaspora, I'm a returnee. So I know we, being in IOM, I think that's one of the key assets, is just we understand what the need of diaspora, and we're trying to make sure those needs are going to be met before bringing them in.
Okay.
Of course, the sector we're talking about, agriculture, you know, it's a very productive sector, even though the productivity of particularly the sector is yet to be realized. But we just hope that, of course, the discussion you guys have held will add up to.
Exactly, and we definitely keep you guys in touch, and you guys were there to cover the event as well. We'll keep you guys in touch on that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rashid. Rashid Conteh, who is the Project Officer and Communication Specialist at International Organization for Migration in Sierra Leone, that's IOM, and also a returnee. So we're also going to give him that tag, a returnee as well. So we say good luck to you, and it's great that you came back home to Sierra Leone, and we're also urging and encouraging other people as well to come back home and contribute meaningfully to the growth and development of Sierra Leone.
Thank you so much.
But I guess this is where we just end the conversation today. I'm thinking maybe we should probably just grab okay, anyway, I think that's it. Thanks for joining us today. For all of you who've been a part of a conversation, your messages, those of you who've been watching, listening to us from every part of Sierra Leone and the world as well, we say thank you. We've come to the end of today's conversation, and I'm not going to leave you without giving you a reminder of the quote, which is coming from an American retired business executive author and chemical engineer Jack Welsh, who says management is all about managing in the short term while developing the plans for the long term. Wise what's said, and I hope that you have picked a thing or two out of it. But from Star Banker, I'm hoping that you have a very beautiful day. Continue to watch AYV and listen to us as well on all our various social media platforms. I would want to hear from you, what you think about the Big Sister show. Drop your comments on our social media. I see Rashid is smiling, so I know he's been watching it.
Sure.
But remember to drop your comments on our social media platforms, and we'll definitely be showing them on the screen on channel 34 on our website www.ayvnews.com, on our mobile app. You can also catch us live on ITV channel 29, and we're literally everywhere on our YouTube page, AYV television live stream. That's it there. Find us there and watch us and drop your comments. Take care.
Yes, of course. And for me, Samuel Ibrahim Kurma, of course, remember to connect with us on our Facebook page, AYV Sierra Leone, and also on our website, www.ayvnews.com. And don't forget to join us tomorrow at 8 a.m. for another fresh edition of Wake Up Sierra Leone. Until we meet again, of course, have yourself a blessed day. And we shall be discussing, I believe, the international